In the early days of Photopass, we were constantly trying new things, experimenting, changing things around, and then sometimes you wish that those deciding on changes would just make up their minds. When I started at Photopass in 2006, 2007, much of what we did was still very new, and we were constantly adding on things, trying new things, experimenting. If something didn't work, we would stop doing that, and we might try something else instead. I came on right as they had expanded into all 4 parks from having only been in 2 previously. We helped kind of push Kodak out and take all sorts of new things on. And so we were constantly experimenting and learning what worked and what didn't work. And then as things would work, it would kind of move its way up in the chain of command, and we would get guidelines and suggestions and rules. And in the early days, those rules would change all the time. There were times it seemed like they would change on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis. And you'd have times not knowing whether something was okay or not. To the point where sometimes you go, would you make up your mind? Because it had gone back and forth so often. Let me give you some examples of what it was like to kind of build the system and then try to figure out what we were doing. One of the things that we were supposed to do if we were out on the streets in the parks, taking pictures of the icon like Spaceship Earth or the castle, we had to do a couple regular pose shots, and then we were supposed to do what was called a creative shot, where we tried something a little different, some different poses, something funny, humorous, use some props that they might have, something like that to have some fun with. Well, one of the shots that several of us did was called a jump shot, and it's exactly what it sounds like, where you would try to get everybody lined up, and then you would time them so you could take a picture as they were all jumped up in the air, and they would all hit this nice pose, and it would be a lot of fun. There were several of us that could do it well, and some people just never figured out how to do the timing on it. Disney also has a big, huge emphasis on safety. In fact, it's one of the 4 pillars of the company. Safety begins with me. This shot would tend to kind of come back and forth, and sometimes safety would come down and say, don't do this, somebody might fall and get hurt. And then other times it would be totally okay to take the picture. We got to the point where it changed so often that we didn't know if it was okay or not. So some of us, we just plain shot the picture. An extreme form of this is one point during the Flower and Garden Festival at Epcot. I was working as a rover, which meant I got to wander around and take pictures of people doing stuff, and they had this awesome playground that was in the back of the World Showcase. Well, as part of the playground, they put up some climbing rocks. And these rocks got up about 3 feet high, not very high, high enough for the kids to climb up on top of, had a flat surface, and then kids are kids. They would jump off of it. And I would go by and, oh, hey, look at these kids having fun. And I would take some pictures of the kids climbing the rocks and then jumping off, catching them as they're starting to come off the rocks or stepping off. It's not that big a deal, right? Well, sometimes. The first time I shot these pictures, I actually got, hey, this is a great shot. This is awesome. We want to let you know we loved it. The next week I got a note, hey, this is a safety violation. Don't take this picture ever again. Wait, but I was just told it was a great shot. And then the next week I was actually walking by as a rover, and one of my managers stopped and looked and said, hey, why don't you get some pictures of the kids jumping off the rocks? In fact, there was actually one point, and I wish I had kept this picture, where one of my coworkers had gotten a photo of the week. We actually had a contest where the managers would go through our photos, and ones that they really liked, they would pull out as a photo to recommend for photo of the week. One of my friends actually got a photo of the week as a jump shot, and it had everybody jumping in the air. At the same time, we got a little missive that said, please do not take pictures of guests jumping in the streets and walkways. Jump shot, picture of the week, not supposed... Huh? Yeah, it was very confusing and frustrating sometimes. Another one that kind of would frustrate some of us is we had a general rule with characters that we were not supposed to take pictures of guests with certain things on their shirts. And if they had these certain things, then we would find ways to hide the logos or turn. This included things like tobacco companies, alcohol company logos, pictures that might show something that may be unpleasant that a character wouldn't want to be identified with, things like that. And so we would learn how to put the people behind the character in a group shot to hide the shirt, or have the character do a ta-da and use their hand to really go right over the logo so you couldn't see what it was, and various other ways to hide this. We had to do this with certain other corporate logos as well because of trademarks and copyrights and not wanting to have characters identified with certain ones. But some of those companies would get really confusing, and some of the groups you didn't always know. A good example, I can remember a guest coming through with a big Kodak logo shirt. Well, Kodak had been associated with Disney for years. And I actually had one manager going, yeah, I don't know if we can do that one. And another one at the same time saying, well, it should be fine. I'm going, I'm just a photographer. I don't know, so I'm going to shoot it anyways. So sometimes we would get even muddied up with our own rules. Most of the time, a shirt was pretty obvious if it was something that couldn't be worn. But yeah, every now and then we would have something and we're like, well, how are we as the photographers supposed to know, or the poor characters or attendants, if our own management can't seem to figure it out? In a case like that, we would usually just go ahead and shoot the picture anyways and let them figure it out later. Another good example where we had a general guideline, but there would be exceptions sometimes, was with the equity performers. Equity was actually an acting and stage and screen union that many of our performers at Disney were a member of. For example, if you're watching the Castle stage show in the middle of the day, all those people that are up there dancing around and singing and that whole bit, they're all part of the equity union. Same thing with the street performers, the city folk that are on Main Street, the citizens of Hollywood, and various other performers are all part of this equity union. Well, equity generally has a rule that we were not allowed to take pictures of these people because of owning their own likenesses and having to pay rights and things like that. So our general rule was, you don't take pictures of them. It could get interesting if you had a performer, for example, Sergio over at Italy, loved to pose with the guests. And if I was walking by, he would actually whistle at me to take pictures of him doing something with the guests he was playing with. Or if we were on Main Street, the mayor and the fire chief loved posing with people that they had gotten to know over the years. And so they would come up, hey, get a picture of us. But I'm not really supposed to, and I don't care, do it anyways. Okay. And it would mean we would have to take the picture, and then we would have to immediately be getting a hold of our managers to let them know, hey, this entertainer is part of the union just told me take this picture with so-and-so. Please let QA, our quality assurance, or the photo screeners, know that this picture is coming through. I have been told to take it by them. It is with their permission, and the union can go, because this is their job. Even so, we still have a couple people quality assurance that sometimes would get trigger happy, I would call it, and hit the delete button or the hide button because, hey, it's equity. I don't care if they said so. Or maybe they hadn't gotten the message. So then it was, do we shoot? Do we not shoot? What do we do? Another good rule that we had was you were not supposed to take a picture of a cast member in costume. If they had any of their costume on, or their name tag on, or anything that could identify them as a cast member, we were not supposed to take the picture because they're not supposed to be out on stage in costume. I actually ran into this myself kind of early on when we were told as we were first starting, hey, when you're done with your shift, put some of your stuff away, change your clothes if you can, and then go walk through Toontown and experience it as a guest. Well, I didn't have a change of clothes, so I took off my vest and my name tag and what I could, and I looked at the manager and said, okay, all I have is my cast member shirt and shorts. I put away the vest. Is this okay to even go out in? Am I going to get in trouble? And am I going to get them in trouble? No, that's fine. You look like a guest now. Okay, and so I went and I visited a couple of the characters. Well, one of the characters didn't want to take a picture with me at all because they didn't want to get in trouble for having a picture taken with a cast member in costume. The other two were very hesitant to do so, and are you sure? Because they didn't want to get in trouble, and I didn't want to get in trouble, but it put some people in an awkward situation, and yeah, I had fun. I got a couple great pictures. Of the three characters, I had one I didn't get a picture taken with, I had one that I did get to keep, and the others seemed to kind of appear and disappear off my Photopass because nobody could figure out if it was okay or not. So rules were constantly changing. Another good example is Magic shots. Magic shots are those pictures where you take a picture of the guests and they're pointing or looking at something like that, and then when they go to look at their pictures later, there's a little bit of magic that happens and a character or something special shows up. A good example, one that everybody knows, is holding Tinkerbell on your hands. Hey, look, I found a fairy. Or you may be pointing up at something or looking down at the ground and Stitch is making a mess or sitting next to somebody. There's all sorts of different magic shots that can be a lot of fun. When I started, we had a few magic shots that we did, and we went through as part of our regular training. Here's how you shoot this picture. Here's how you shoot that picture. Then we couldn't figure out where Tinkerbell was. For a while, we had a rule that Tinkerbell magic shots could only be taken in Magic Kingdom. Then it became okay to take them at Epcot. And then it became okay to take them at all the parks. And then it was only Magic Kingdom again, because Tinkerbell only flies at Magic Kingdom and she's not at Animal Kingdom. But she might show up at Epcot, but she might not. Okay, so where are we taking Tinkerbell? Is it anywhere? And they started letting us know that some of the magic shots could only be taken in certain parks and some could be taken anywhere. Or not. Others that could all be taken anywhere, and so it was constantly changing. And then we ended up with this rule after I had been there about a year and a half, that in order to take magic shots at all, you had to go through this special training to show you how to take the magic shots and to be signed off on it. And if you weren't signed off, well, you weren't supposed to be taking magic shots. Those of us that had started when I did, we didn't have any official training, at least nothing that we signed. We just went out and we learned how to shoot them, how to pose the people, how to arrange them, and we shot them. Well, I can still remember I had a manager come up to me one day after I had been out roving at Epcot, and I had been taking several magic shots because Epcot's a great place to take a bunch of them. And as I walk into the office at the end of the day, he's kind of standing there looking at me. Whoa, what's wrong? What happened? You're taking magic shots. Yep, that's part of my job. That's what I do. You're not signed off on them. Wasn't aware I had to be. I've been shooting them since I started. When did this change? Well, if you're not signed off on them, you're not supposed to be taking them and you can get in trouble. Really now? I'll be happy to talk to somebody else and let you know that I know how to do it, because I've been shooting longer than you've been in the company. But, so for a few of us, we would actually have to go to upper management and have the upper management tell the lower management, hey, this guy knows what he's doing, knock it off and leave him alone. It made it very interesting sometimes picking up shifts, because their overemphasis sometimes on have you been trained in this location was really kind of silly. For example, I picked up a shift one time that had me scheduled at Toontown with the fairies, being able to shoot Tinkerbell and Rosetta and Vidya and a couple of the others. As I get there to pick up this shift, the coordinator, who didn't know me at that point because I had been working at Epcot, looked at me and said, "You're not signed off for fairies. You can't work in this room." I'm sorry, I was working in that room 2 stages before it was fairies, when it was a whole different group of character. I think I can shoot it. Well, I don't think so. And we had this long conversation over whether I knew how to shoot these characters or not. And I was like, your settings for the camera are on the wall where it's easy to find. Send me into the room. And we had to call the park manager for our department, who told her on the phone, it's George? Really? George knows what he's doing. Sign him off. Thank you! Ran into the same thing at Star Wars weekends. And here the coordinators had known me for a long time, and I'm here to pick up shifts, and they're saying, sorry, you can't work with any of the Star Wars characters. That's the whole reason I'm here, is to work with the Star Wars characters. Well, you haven't been signed off on it, which means you haven't been trained. Like, I've been trained on how many other characters and how many other parks and everything. What do you mean I don't know how to shoot Star Wars? Well, sorry, it's one of those changes. And I had to have the department manager for the day come over, who also knew me, and say, just check him off, really? You know he knows it. Yeah, but I gotta follow these procedures, because we'd have people come in the company who were goobers and didn't know what those of us who've been around for a while. In any case, all of that was the early days, and hopefully the photographers today aren't seeing all of that constant change. As I was leaving in 2011, they were finally starting to settle down some of that, and certain things had been decided, and it didn't seem like we had anywhere near as much back and forth on a lot of those. So it was nice to see it change, but I'm certain that there are still a lot of changes going on. So are you aware, have you run into one of these things where a photographer didn't know if they could shoot something or not? Or something, whether Disney or another park, where photographers weren't aware of what they could shoot or what they couldn't shoot or what they shouldn't shoot or even how to shoot. Yeah, I've seen that too. I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Please don't forget to hit the like button, give me a thumbs up, share the video as well for other people who might be interested in knowing a little bit about what Photopass was like in the early days. Thank you also to my patrons for supporting me. Their financial support is a huge blessing. If you want to know more about Patreon and supporting me, about merchandise that's available for sale, about my fan page, my group page where all sorts of people get to share, Reddit, Discord, the equipment I use, wish lists, all of that kind of stuff, it's all down in the description. Check it out. There's a ton there. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless. So if you're watching, say, the Cashel... So if you're watching the Cashel, I want some cash. You need some cash. Okay. If you want to know whenever I have a new video out, well, hey, make sure you hit that button right there and subscribe. If you want to see another video right now, well, I've got a great one right here for you. And if you want to be like these wonderful people here and help support me financially on Patreon, well, check out that link right there and it'll take you to it. Thanks so much and God bless.